Good morning. This is VirtualPBX admin training. I'm going to give people another minute or so to get logged in if they're going to join us. What you should be seeing on your screen is the Dash login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. If you're on the VirtualPBX website, you would just mouse over support, and on the left there would be a column there for Dash related things, and I believe the second or third one down is the Dash login page. Let's go ahead and get started here. So your username is going to be your email address that you signed up with, or that your admin created for you or inputted for you. And of course I make a typo, so let's restart this. So yeah, your email address, your password, and then your account name is usually your company name. And then you have the option to click Remember Me or forgot your password or forgot your info. And then you click Login. And then you should see the dashboard. Now, the first time you log in as an admin, it's going to have the Dash wizard pop up, basically show you some account level information. Once you close out of that, then you get to the dashboard here. Over on the left, you've got your navigation. Now, in a wider view, you'll actually have you'll have text here. So you'll have dashboard. This will be numbers, users, groups. This is your main number. Basically, how you handle your incoming call handling, your voicemail boxes, the feature codes, and then the call logs. Over here in the middle, this is your total users, so the number of people on the account. So these are people who are making and receiving calls. All right. Dash plans are based on the number of users you have. So the more users you have, the higher your bill is going to be. So if you have people on here who aren't making or receiving calls, you probably don't need them to be on your account in that regard. Down below, you've got your devices and split up by type. And then unregistered devices, this is in relation to your VoIP devices, meaning that the system says, hey, they're not connected, we can't send a call to it. Over here on the further to the right, main number. So these are the typical numbers your customers are calling to get to your phone system. All right, these numbers all behave the same way, so they'll have the same main greeting, and they'll have the same routing. And you can have multiple. I mean, you could have 20 here if you wanted or more. Then you got the fax box number. This is to let you receive inbound faxes. You obviously don't have to have a fax box number if you're not going to expect to receive faxes. And you can also have a conference number listed here as well. Total numbers, all the phone numbers on your account. Dash plans typically include anywhere from 1 to 3 phone numbers as part of the plan, as part of your monthly price. Once you go over that, typically it's $4.99 per month per phone number. The only exceptions to that are typically international phone numbers, which might have a higher rate, but that's something that our reporting team could let you know about at that time. And in fact, if you need an international number you're going to want to email porting at virtualpbx.com. At the very least, they will need to know the city and country that you're interested in. They will let you know if getting a number in that location is possible for us. And if so, then they'll also let you know if there's any special requirements. Like some countries require a proof of presence, like a utility bill. Sometimes they require a bit more. It just depends on the country. All right, so then we have the breakdown here, assigned numbers and spare numbers. So an assigned number is a number that's going someplace. So it's a main number, or it goes directly to a user or a ring group. A spare number, just a number on your account you're not currently using. It doesn't ring anywhere, but you're still going to be charged for it if you're over your plan allotment. And then we have the breakdown here between U.S. local numbers, DID, and U.S. toll-free. And you would also have international here if you had international numbers. Down below that, we've got the company directory, and you notice that the users here is 11, even though the users on the account is 21. So when a user is created, the admin can choose to have that user in the user directory or not. And the admin can always change that at any time by editing the user. But that's basically where this is reflected on, and then, of course, the download link to the right. The account ID number, this is your account number. Now, typically, if you call into support or to our billing team, for example, we're typically going to ask you for your company name versus asking you to read off this long alphanumeric string. The account realm, you use this for a couple things. Predominantly going to be to program a third-party VoIP device. That would be like a VoIP phone that's not on our auto provision list, which we'll get to shortly, or like a soft phone from, like, say, CounterPass. They have several different soft phone applications. You would use this, at least this part of this, or you'd use the realm to do part of the programming for that soft phone. Excuse me. And then down here is the store discount code. Just for being a Dash customer, you get a discount on items that you purchase through our web store, which is got a link up there. Speaking of up here we have a caller ID. So this is your account default caller ID. This is something the system does want to have filled out. You can choose from your main numbers. And then you've got the company caller ID name. This is restricted to 15 characters. That includes spaces and special characters. As far as I know, this is an industry standard. Once you hit Save Changes, this information gets sent to all the carriers who support CNAME. And it takes usually about 3 business days. It can take a little bit longer, but the average is about 3 business days. And then once you call out, this information will be sent along when you make an outbound call. Now, a couple things to keep in mind about CNAME. Not every carrier that calls route through supports CNAME. They just simply decide not to do it. Which means if your call happens to route through one of those characters, your CNAME information does not get sent or delivered to the person you're calling. Even for the carriers who do support CNAME, it's their lowest priority. So if they have heavier than expected call volume, that's the first thing they're going to drop because, again, their priority is, hey, connect the call. And then caller ID, the phone number itself, is the next priority. And obviously, if they're having a maintenance issue or an outage, that's also not going to get through. Hopefully your call still does, it's still able to. Below that, you have company emergency or E911 address. So this is a default address that will be sent when a VoIP phone is picked up and they dial 911. Obviously, you want to make sure this address is correct. And as mentioned, this is the default. So you can change it by device. So for you have employees at different locations, they can have the correct E911 address. All right, hold music. So Dash will allow you to upload media files in .wav, .wav, or .mp3 formats. The main thing to remember when you upload a media file is to make sure it's recorded in mono, not in stereo. Right? Basically, when you call in to listen over the phone, you have one speaker. It's a mono device. When you try it, if you have a stereo file uploaded, what you'll be lucky to hear anything. Oftentimes, when you're listening over the phone, you'll hear a lot of static. You might hear whatever you have, whatever the media file is. Sometimes you just hear silence. So yeah, just make sure you upload in mono. Now for hold music on Dash, what this is basically your caller calls in, they hit a menu option or extension, whatever. When your staff member picks up the phone and presses hold on their VoIP phone, this is the default hold music that will play. Okay. In terms of your inbound callers, until they actually connect with someone, the default is they'll hear ringing. Now, if they go to a ring group, they can have ring back, which is essentially hold music while they wait to speak to someone. But in general, your inbound callers are going to hear just ringing. All right, next we got hours. This actually puts us under our main number section. So here, for a new sign up, you're going to start off as 24-hour open office, i.e. your system's ready to take calls. Not everyone is open 24 hours really, so you have custom office hours. For each day of the week, you put a check mark. For each day of the week that you're open, right, that you're going to be accepting calls, you put a check mark. And then in these middle columns here, boxes, you choose your open hours. This is in 24-hour or military time. So for the evening hours, just subtract 12, and that gives you what most of us are used to saying. And then down here at the very bottom, if your whole location is closed for lunch, then you can put a check mark here and then enter your lunch hours. And then you would click Save Changes. Next up, we have office holidays. So you can set your holidays in advance. And what you want to do is, put a check mark here to say that you are closed for holidays. Over here to the right, under Add Holiday, you have your choice of single day, date range, or advanced. Single day, pretty straightforward. You're closed for a day. And if you look here, we've got President's Day already selected for February 20th. So that means the system knows, hey, once February 20th comes in, boom, you're in holiday mode. All right, date range, which is right down here for Christmas. Again, we have it set for December 22nd to the 26th, so as long as it's those dates, the system will put us on holiday mode. Once the 27th comes around, boom, we're going to be back in our open normal hours. Now, one thing to keep in mind is for the date range is you want to avoid New Year's Eve and New Year's Day in the same date range. Basically, the system handles it poorly because there's no year field to put in there. So it just puts you in closed immediately and until you change the holiday. So for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, we say just do a single day for each one, and then you can then do date ranges before them or after them as necessary. All right, advanced. We have an example up here. So the second Monday in March, we're closed. It's that office retreat, for example. And then one other caveat for things like President's Day where the date changes from year to year, you probably don't want to update it as soon as you get back. You might want to wait till the following week, just that way you don't put yourself in closed on back-to-back days unintentionally. Whereas things like 4th of July, United States, you can just leave it because if it's 4th of July, we're closed. And again, you click on Save Changes. Next, we get to the big one, incoming call handling. So this is how your system is handling calls that are going to your main numbers. And down here, we've got a couple tabs. So we've got our open hours and holidays. Now, this system is set in the 24-hour mode. However, if I was in the custom open hours, then I would also have an after hours tab, and you can also have a lunch hours tab. And then you've got these routing options. So the first option here is call comes in, goes to the virtual receptionist. And what that basically means is call comes in, the system's going to then play a greeting, and then it's waiting for that caller to press a menu option or enter an extension number to continue the call. Right. So this, what we have here on the left is the main menu. So this is what people press on their phone to navigate through the system. And these are basically 0 through 9 on the dial pad, and yet you can set up. And you can have it go to a particular person. You can have it go to a ring group. You can have it go to an ACD queue. You can have it go directly to a voicemail box. You can actually set it go to a device or even just a media file, although we don't typically recommend those two just because it's like for a media file, after the media file plays, the call ends. So it's a little bit abrupt. And then over here you have your greeting options. Text-to-speech, you simply type in a greeting and click that update, and then it's in play. Right, upload your own file. Again, you can .wav.mp3 recorded in mono. You can upload and then click update. Now, if you've already uploaded several things, you can choose from a list and change it. So like you have after the holidays, you say, hey, let's go back to our normal greeting. You can record it over the phone. By default, Dash, when it says record over the phone and it says a registered phone, that means a registered VoIP phone on the account. And then during that time frame, so right now we're in the open hours. So during my open hours, I can call into my main number, hit this particular PIN number, and then record a greeting. If I had after hours set up, for example, I would have to make sure the system is in after hours, and I would call in, and I would have a different PIN number between after hours and my open hours. Then there's professional recordings. We've partnered with another company called Snap Recordings, and if you click on the order button there, it'll take you to their website. They have something like 100 different voice actors to choose from between men and women. They have various versions of English. They have various versions of French and Spanish, and you also have the option for multilingual greetings. They also have packages that include a mix of hold music and a script, right? So music plays, there's some speaking, music plays, that sort of thing. They handle their own billing. They handle the delivery to you, and then you would simply upload to Dash. All right, and then down below that, we have settings. Basically, this is the number of retries on misdial. So basically, how many times will your greeting play, and how many times can an inbound caller make a wrong selection? I usually say you want one or two, about 2 or 3, so that way, you know, someone's calling and like someone's screaming in the background, so they didn't hear all the options. They have a chance to hear it again, and then another menu option. The other thing that I typically recommend is to not, one of the options for the menu option, or the main menu, is default action. Basically, there's no valid entry, and then the system will send the call to that default action. I don't recommend doing that just because then you can get robodialers getting into your system. Robodialer can't press a menu option. So just leave it like this, where there's no default action, and you don't have to worry about robodialers getting through. And then you would click Save. All right. Next option here is call comes in, and you can have it go to a user. You can have it go to a ring group. You can even have it go to an ACD queue if you wanted. But if no one is able to pick up, then it goes to the virtual receptionist, right? So basically, you're giving your staff members a chance to answer the call first, and if no one's able to, then the inbound caller goes to the virtual receptionist where they can click a menu option and try to reach someone. And then the last option, call comes in, again, goes to a user or a group, etc. If they're not able to answer, though, the call instead goes to a voicemail box. And again, you have these same options under holiday or even after hours, etc. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, especially when you're on the virtual receptionist page here, if you make any change, right? Notice I'm on the holidays. That's why there's a different option here. You click Save, but then you also need to click Save Changes here, and that saves all your changes, right? If you miss that second one especially, your changes aren't actually saved, and you actually might have problems for people calling in because the system isn't properly set up at that point. Then lastly, we have your main fax box number, which I think mine is currently airing out on. But basically, if you click Edit Fax Box, what should happen is a box will pop up and allow you to enter your email address in terms of to receive the inbound faxes, and then they get sent to your email automatically. There's a second box out there where you can put in your email domain. So, abcdogwalking.com. You can put, at abcdogwalking.com in that second field. Anyone with that email domain, it can then send a fax out. So if you have staff members who aren't necessarily making and receiving calls, but they do occasionally need to send a fax out, that's what you would want to do. All right, now we'll go over to numbers. Numbers basically shows your numbers on your account and where they're going. And so these are the numbers in use. And then spare numbers, these are your extra numbers. You have the option to buy. So you go local, and you would enter in an area code. You'll see available list, and you can keep scrolling down, and more numbers will show up. And you can just add as many numbers as you want at a time, and you would click on Buy Numbers. This system would verify that the numbers are still available, and then they'd activate them onto your account. Similar process for toll-free. You just choose toll-free prefix, and again, you'll see what's available. You click Add, and then Buy Numbers. Over here, we got port. So port is industry term for moving a phone number from one carrier to another. So from AT&T to VirtualPBX, right? That means porting the number, moving it from them to us. Basically, we would need what's called a letter of agency, or LOA, which is a form that's on our website as well as in this port process that you can download and fill out. For a local phone number, we also need a copy of the bill for that phone number. Then you get that to our porting team, and we begin the porting process. Now, this port section here actually walks you through the entire process and can submit the documents for you. Or you can simply just email the documents to porting@virtualpbx.com. Porting a toll-free number usually takes anywhere from about 3 to 5 business days on average. A local phone number can take anywhere from 1 business day, which is the fastest I've seen it, up to about 6 weeks. It really just depends on the other carrier. Now, normally, if everything's ship-shape, it's like a week, maybe 2, right? But if there's any kind of problems or whatnot, that will always slow it down. So you give us the porting documents, we submit the port request. Your current carrier lets us know, hey, that's great, here's the release date, and then we communicate that to you. Or, nope, that's wrong. And they'll tell us what information is wrong, and again, we communicate that to you saying, hey, they said this information was wrong. You need to confirm with them what the correct information is and or change the information to match what it's supposed to be. Let us know, and then we update the port request and begin the process again. All right, users, this is where you add people. If you click on Add User, you give your first and last name, then you need an email address. Each user should have a unique email address. Right, so if Bob and Mary have been sharing support at virtualpbx.com, you can't have them both be users with that email address for both of them. Now, I could create support1 at VirtualPBX. I can enter in support1 at virtualpbx.com and then support2 at virtualpbx.com for each of them. The downside of that is if it's not a valid email address on my email server, then they're not going to get any notifications to those email addresses, whether that's a voicemail notification or they have to do a password reset. So you give their name, put their email address, you create a password, and then the system says, here's the next available extension. So on this particular account, I started off with extension 1000. I could have started with anything. I could have started at 2512, 821, whatever, 8201, excuse me, or 82001 if I only wanted 3 digits. Now, and then in this case, so the system says, hey, under that 1000 series, this is the next one that's available, right? Because the system typically says most people want to have everyone with the same sequence. But I can change this, right? So I can say, nope, I'm putting in a new person, and I'm going to put them at 3012, just because, or their new department, or a subsidiary, etc. Here's my option to include in the company directory or not. And then the main one I always say is check this one is send the credentials to the user. So that way your new user has their login information so they can get logged in. And then you click on create user. Once they're here, you can click on their name. So you can always change the name. So you can reuse an extension. Although typically speaking, if, say, an employee leaves, it's usually better just to delete them and then create a new extension for the new person. But you can always change their email address and their name and their password. Their voicemail box. And then this is a PIN. So you do need to create a PIN if you want people to log into their voicemail boxes from a cell phone. Right? If they're just going to use their VoIP phone all the time, you don't have to create a PIN for them, because when they log in through the voice from their VoIP phone the first time, the system will prompt them to create a PIN. Alternate address. This is an addition to this address up here. Right, so if Bob gets an email and I add a different address here, then it's going to go sent to both email addresses. And then here's the option to include or remove from the company directory. Over here, you can decide to make Bob an admin. It'll be basically you have a user or an admin. The only caveat I have here is just make sure for yourself, don't accidentally put yourself to a user and then save and log out, unless you already have another admin on the account. This is time zone. This is the language. Ringing timeout. So for us, in terms of when we're trying to reach out to the devices on the user, we don't tell your phone to ring 4 times or 6 times. But what we do say is, hey, we're trying to reach out to your phone for a given amount of time measured in seconds, and the default is 20 seconds. 20 seconds is usually typically enough time for reaching out to a VoIP phone or a landline. However, if you're trying to reach a cell phone, you're going to want to up this to about 45 or 60 seconds. And that's because it simply takes longer to route a call to a cell phone than to a landline or VoIP phone, because those are in static locations typically. Whereas every time a call goes to your cell phone, your cell phone provider has to find you. And then your main extension. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when you create a user, that same instant that they're created, a voicemail box is created for them. And that voicemail box is intrinsically tied to that user. If you happen to delete their voicemail box and try to create one manually later, there's no way for you to tie it back together the same way. So in that case, you're going to have to basically delete the user and recreate it if you want them to have a voicemail box. All right. Users can have multiple extensions if you want them to. They can also have their own phone number that goes directly to them, bypasses the virtual receptionist completely. And you also have the option here to either add from your existing spare numbers, or you can buy a new number. Devices. This is where you add devices to your user. All right, so SIP phone or VoIP phone, right? So SIP is a particular type of VoIP phone. It's forget what it's like the session interface protocol, I believe. So it's a particular version of a VoIP phone. So not every VoIP phone is a SIP phone, but every SIP phone is a VoIP phone. Anyway, we support these manufacturers for auto provisioning. If you click on them, we also have specific models. You would find your model, and then at the bottom of the page, which unfortunately is cut off, you would give the phone a name, so like Bob's phone, and then enter the MAC address, which is usually on the back of the phone. There's a sticker that will say MAC. It's also usually on the box of the phone itself. And then you would click on Create Device. Then you have to go into the phone's web user interface, and we have a guide on our website. But basically, you have to adjust a line under their auto provision settings. Click Save. Then the phone will reboot. Reach out to internet to us. We'll find the phone going, oh, hey, we know what you are. Here's your configuration information. The phone will probably reboot again, and then the phone will be on your system and registered, hopefully, and then it's good to go. And you can basically use almost all the features on your phone. All right, cell phone and landline are basically the same. You put in a name, and then you put +1 area code and phone number. And then you'll click on Create Device. Now let's So once you've created the device under Advanced and Options, you'll see here. Now, by default, when Dash sends a call to a cell phone or a landline, right, your phone will ring and you pick up. You'll hear, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. So when you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there to take the call, and then it'll connect the call. If you don't press 1, the system will then move the call onto either the next device on your user or send that caller to your voicemail. If you don't want to do that, right, you just want to pick up and talk, or you're actually sending the call not to a cell, but to a person right off the bat, but you're sending it to like an automated answering service, what you would want to do, put a check mark here, allow use of cell phone's voicemail. So what that does is when we send the call to that device, we hear that pickup tone, the system just connects the call. It doesn't wait for that tone to say, or the additional tone to connect the call. Now, if you're actually sending this to your cell phone, for example, and you have this particular feature checked here, if you don't pick up the call, then that inbound caller can end up on your cell phone's voicemail. Some people love it, some people hate it. In that particular case, that's purely up to you. All right, keep a regional caller ID. So basically what this means is call comes to your cell phone, it's going to show that inbound caller's actual caller ID. If you uncheck this, what would show up instead would be your VirtualPBX phone number that they dialed into. So that way on your phone, you're like, oh, it's a business call. You know it right off the bat, versus like random spam, robodialer, or telemarketer, or whatever. And then hide from contact list is just so it doesn't show up on the contact list on the system. Let's go back up here. All right, soft phone is a type of VoIP phone. It's basically a software application on a computer or a smartphone to allow you to make and receive calls. Right. So originally on computers, but now that's, smartphones are powerful enough, you can actually have an additional application to make and receive calls on it. So yet another way to determine if it's a work call versus a personal call. So by default, the system is saying, hey, you're adding a soft phone. We're assuming you're going to add a third-party soft phone. So Xlite from Counterpath, for example. If, for instance, you want to use the VirtualPBX soft phone app, then what you would want to do first and foremost is down here at the bottom where it says use third-party application, you would click here. And it says now it says use VirtualPBX application. You put a device name, you hit create device. Now I'm adding this on the user directly. And that's the proper way to add it for a VirtualPBX off phone. What happens is when we hit click create device, it's going to email the user directly. Here's your login information for your soft phone. Please go ahead and download the app. Now, we do have a desktop version of our app for Windows and Mac OS. However, there's a licensing fee related to that, so you'd want to either purchase that directly from the web store or contact our billing team to get that organized. Otherwise, if you're using another application other than ours, you'd give it a device name. You'd use a SIP username and then the SIP password, and then the realm to program that application. And then you'll click on create device. All right. Web phone, again, for web phones, you need to create this directly on the user. And you give it a name, and then you click create device. So what this does is allows a user to make use of Chrome or Firefox on their computer that's connected to the internet to make and receive calls directly from the browser window. It uses the same login information as their Dash login, so their email address, the same password, and then the account name, right, or your company name. But then they'll have typically a tab open, right? They'll have a little dial pad on the browser window. As long as they have a headset and mic, or at least the mic and speakers, they can make and receive calls directly from their browser. And then landline, fax, AT, those are all basically the same. All right, let's get to user features. All right, caller ID number. So this is for users that have a phone number specifically for them, right? So DID, it's in that little phone number box across from the username. So they can choose, or you can choose for them rather, say, hey, turn on caller ID, meaning their phone number becomes their caller ID whenever they make outbound calls. So that way, people say, oh, it's from this phone number, they can call that number back. It goes directly to them instead of going through your virtual receptionist. Call forwarding, this is a VoIP feature. Basically, I have it, like here, it's set on failover mode, basically meaning when my VoIP phone loses connection for whatever reason, right? I lost power, or my internet service provider had an outage and now my VoIP phone can't connect, or my dog was running around, pulled out the plug on the phone, whatever. The system will text that, says, hey, phone's unregistered. And a call comes into my user, it'll go into failover mode and forward the call to my cell phone. Now, the key thing is for the forwarding device, so my cell phone, it cannot be a device already on my user. So I just have my VoIP device, and if that doesn't work for whatever reason, then it forwards to my cell phone number. Now, you can also just turn this on, which means, hey, just send it to my cell phone. Basically, I'm going to be away from my desk. Right? I'm going out to customer sites, but I still need to take calls when I'm not actually at the customer sites, or even if I am there, whatever. But basically say, hey, I can still take calls, so I'm not just completely out of the office and not doing work. But the failover mode to me is the big feature, just because, hey, you may not always realize your VoIP phone lost connection, and suddenly you get calls on your cell phone, you're like, what happened to my internet? Or what happened to my VoIP phone? Hot desking is another VoIP phone feature. This, however, is for situations where you're in a shared office environment where your staff may be in different desks every day. Right, so Monday you came in, I'm sitting at desk 23. If you have hot desk enabled, what you do is you pick up that VoIP phone at desk 23. You hit *11, which is the feature code to enable hot desking. And then, say for instance, I make this my hot desk ID. So I hit *11. It's going to ask me for my hot desk ID. I hit 3757, and it says you're now logged into the phone, meaning that when a call now comes in, hits my user, it's going to go to the phone at desk 23, right? So then I can pick up the call and do my work. End of my day, I hit pick up the phone, hit *12, and this or toggled off hot desking. So then today I came in, I'm sitting at desk number 7, yay, lucky number 7. Again, pick up the phone, hit *11, hit 3757. Now calls are coming to me at desk number 7. That's what hot desking is for. Took me a while to understand that until I was in a shared office environment. Voicemails, again, every user has a voicemail box. The main thing is we do recommend delete messages from the database after sending a notification. So by default, Dash will send the user an email saying, hey, you got a voicemail. And then in that voicemail, or in that email, there's an attachment. You can double click on it and listen to the voicemail. And so when you delete after notification, you're like, hey, we're not going to keep that voicemail since we already sent it to you. And that's important because on Dash, you're limited to 100 voicemails in your voicemail box. Once you hit that, then it says the box is full. Please try again later. This way you don't have to worry about it. It's like, oh, I can always take voicemails. Fax box. Each user can have their own fax box if they so desire, or I guess as an admin if you want them to. You can select it from a spare number. You can give them, or you can buy a new number, or you can give it an extension. Now, I typically recommend just using a phone number, because that way your user can then say, hey, if you need to fax it to me, just fax it to this specific phone number. No muss, no fuss. However, maybe you don't want to pay for the extra phone number. So if you do the extension, that's fine, but you have to let your inbound fax people know. They would call your main number, and then they have to hit the extension number that they're going to fax to. Then they hit fax start on their fax machine. Some people are okay with that. Some people aren't. All right, follow me. This is for people with multiple devices. So by default, what happens is if you don't have, right, here, let's, there. So by default, it's off. If you enable it, this is how it comes up when you first enable Follow Me. It says, hey, we're not ringing on Follow Me. Basically what this means is when a call comes to you, in this case, both of my devices ring at the same time and for the same amount of time. Right? Instead, what you would do is make use of them. Now I can click Distribute, so then it goes in order. If I don't like that particular order, I can click and drag and hit Distribute again, so now it's in the proper order I want it. And then you can adjust these sliders as you see fit. Just make sure that you don't, one thing to avoid is you want to avoid something like this, where there's a gap, because basically the system says, oh, call ended, I'm going to send it to voicemail. All right, so you at least want to make sure they have that. So that way the system knows, oh, it's sending you to the next device. And again, you can have multiple devices. Music on hold. Users can have their own hold music. You would just click Enabled, upload a file, find the file, boom. Again, .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono. And then save changes. And then you also have customized call recording. So the system does support call recording. The calls are stored on AWS. So if you have it enabled, inbound internal means call from another user on the account calls me. Right? Inbound external means call from a customer to me. Outbound internal means I called another user. And then outbound external means I called a customer. And right now calls are stored in MP3 format. All right, so next up we have got groups. So groups or ring groups, these are essentially departments and fairly straightforward routing for groups. Now, obviously to be in a group you need to be a user on the account. And you just give it a name. You give it an extension so your staff members can transfer calls to that group, and then you would click and drag the people that you want to have in the group, and then you click on Create Group. Once you click on it, or once you've created it, you can always change the name, and then you've got this option here for dialing repeats with little arrows to the right. So basically, I can up that to as much as I want. With dialing repeats is basically how many times can the inbound caller go through the group, right? So I have it set to 2 now, so basically it can go through once, no one picked up. Okay, I'm going to send it through one more time. And basically gives your inbound caller a couple of chances to have someone pick up the call. Right. Members, these are all the people that are in this particular group. I had clicked distribute, so that way I'm staggering their calls, right? So it goes in order. Now, again, like on Follow Me Calling, I can adjust the sliders. So I can do it like this, for instance. So therefore, it's ringing everyone for the entire duration until someone picks up, right? So a call comes in and say, Jonathan here picks up. Okay, the call ends. Everyone else's phone stops. Now, second call comes in. Jonathan is still on that first call. He's going to hear a call waiting beep until, say, Lala here picks up, right? Lala goes up, and the call waiting beep goes away. Right. You can always, again, click and drag people around to give it the order you want and redistribute. And again, you can have some odd overlaps if you want, depending on how you want things to work. Extensions, you can add additional extensions for a group if you want. Groups can have a phone number, so it goes directly to them. So like a sales group number or support number. It's like, hey, just call this number. Go straight to them. And then group features. All right, call recording. It's either on or it's off. Basically, you're recording all the calls that come into the group or you aren't. Ringback is essentially hold music for the group. Actually, let me go back and show you something here. Up here at the top here, that's the total amount of time that calls are going to ring through per dialing attempt. So default is 120 seconds, 2 minutes. You can change that to however you see fit. However, if you're making use of ringback, right? Ringback is essentially hold music for while your inbound caller is waiting for one of your staff members to pick up while they're in the group. You want to make sure that this file is at least as long as your ringing duration of the group, so 2 minutes, because the system doesn't automatically loop the ringback. All right, next action. So if no one in your group was able to pick up after both dialing attempts, what do you want it to do? And in this case, I'm forwarding it to a voicemail box, which is the typical, although you can send them back to the main menu, so they can hit another menu option. Allow call forward. This is for your VoIP phone users. Basically, if you enable this, your VoIP phone users can make use of call forwarding, so they can send calls to a landline or cell phone because they're not going to be at their VoIP phone. And then caller ID prepend. So this is also for your VoIP phone users. You can add additional text or numbers to the caller ID information that shows up on their phones. Basically gives your staff members a heads up of the kind of call they're about to get. It only works with VoIP phones on the account. All right, this is the devices page. Shows all the devices. Green means, as far as we know, they're connected. Red means they're not registered with us. If you ever see a black device, that means it's been disabled. You can add devices here. VoIP phone, cell phone, soft phone. Now again, if you're going to add the VirtualPBX soft phone, you're going to want to do that on the user, and the same applies for the web phone, just because they need to be tied directly to the user. But this is typically used for like you're opening a new location and your IT guy has all the VoIP phones. He doesn't know all the people who are working there. He may not have that list, but he can at least add all the devices, and then you can assign them to users once everything else is set up. Voicemail boxes. So every user has that voicemail box created for them right when they're created. If you ever manually create one, you can do so. Just give it a name, number, and a PIN. You can click on the wrench icon here to see that information. And then under advanced, this is where you can upload a media file, i.e. a greeting for your voicemail boxes. Recipients, you would just click add and input an email address. And then options. Once you have a greeting media file set up and that email address, you can then put a check mark for already set up. And then I also say I recommend delete after notification, so you don't have to worry about a voicemail box getting full. And then save changes. A little asterisk here, this is the feature codes, although it's not sure why it's not showing up. A little odd. However, the feature codes are also available on the VirtualPBX website, so that way you don't have to log in and yell it to people if they need it. They can just see it on the VirtualPBX website. And then over here is the call logs. Basically shows you the call data of calls coming in and out of the system. Green arrow to the right means a call came into the system. Orange or yellow arrow to the left means a call went out. You can click on for additional information to see where calls went to, as well as some codes about what happened. And the little gear icon gives you some more technical details, which you can always send to support to see what happened. Although the main thing is we look first at the hang-up reason or hang-up cause. Right? Normal clearing means the system said, oh, it was a normal call. There wasn't anything abnormal that happened. All right, we're typically looking for things like the no route destination. Like, well, that's different. Usually means there's no device there, or the device location changed. All right, up here at the top right, we also have this horizontal line icon. So we're on the dashboard. All right, you can get here from here to ACD queues. So ACD queues are basically ring groups but on steroids. They have different or more varied routing options. And here we'll go ahead and click on the little gear icon. All right, queue name. Wow, this is really crunch. So you can always change the queue name. Queues can also have their own phone numbers. Oh, you can't see it, but the queue routing strategy, there's 4 to choose from. Round robin, essentially random. There's least offered, meaning whoever's had the least amount of calls sent to them gets the next call that comes in. Doesn't mean they've actually spoken to all those calls. It's just they've had the least amount of calls sent to them. Least calls means who's ever had the least amount of connected calls. So they actually spoke to someone. And then most idle, who's been waiting the longest for a call, they get the next call that comes in. Queue timeout in seconds, basically how long can people wait on hold. The queue call limit, you can set the number of people who can wait on hold. If you use 0, that means there's no limit. Timeout immediately if no one's logged in. If you put that enabled, that means you have no agents logged in and a caller comes in, you send them up to the next option. So escalation queue means you can send it to a second queue, meaning because of a timeout, or you can say, no, I'm going to send it to, in this case, a voicemail box, so they can leave a message. Agent recovery time in seconds, basically after a call is over, how much time is the agent given before another call is offered to them. Right? They have a chance to get a drink of water, finish up their notes, what have you. Force away on rejected or missed. If this is enabled, means if an agent misses a call, the system puts in away mode, and the agent has to put themselves back in ready mode to take calls again. And then agent connect timeout in seconds, basically how much time do we try to reach the devices that the agent is using before we move on to the next agent. So in terms of making use of queues, queues are only available to, or calls will only be sent to VoIP phones for any user who's in an ACD queue. So like if I have a cell phone and 2 VoIP phones on my user and I'm logged into a queue, only my VoIP phones will ring and my cell phone will not from a queue call. Now, if someone calls my user directly, my cell phone will ring. All right. Another advantage of the queues is that your staff members can mark themselves away and or available on their own. So like, hey, I'm going to go to lunch. I can mark myself away. Therefore, my phone isn't ringing incessantly. And also, if I'm already on a queue call, the system is not going to beep me to let me know there's another call. It's just going to go to the next agent in the queue. And queues are $30 per month per queue. All right. Blacklist, this allows you to create a list and to block calls. And you can barely see it here, but that's the edit lists. And you choose a list, you give it a name. You can block anonymous on or off. And then you add a phone number, +1 area code number. You click save. You go back to settings. And then you click and drag the list over to selected. And then you click save again. And now this list is active. And so those numbers can't connect to your system. Basically, when those phone numbers try to call your system, they get a busy tone. Right. As an admin, you can get to any fax box on the account and see their faxes as well as the email to fax logs. The same would apply to voicemail. There's also the recordings, which is actually on AWS. And then every person has access to their own user portal. Right? So they can see their voicemails, they can see their call history, their own faxes, the contact list, which is basically everything on the account. If you have conferencing, they'll have a conference option. Right? They can invite other users on the account to a conference. They can lock a conference. You can mute everybody. You can unmute. You can end the conference. If you're in a conference, you also have additional controls for particular participants. So you can mute a specific participant, or you can also kick a participant as necessary. Big thing for users, though, is under settings and devices, they can enable their own call forwarding so they don't have to bother an admin for it. They can just do it themselves, and they can also see their devices. And then there's also webhooks, which makes, basically, for you making use of APIs to link Dash to other software. And that is the Dash training. If you have any questions, you can feel free to use the chat here on YouTube, and I can address them or cover the topic again. But beyond that, that's everything I have set to cover. So I thank you for your time, and I'll hang out for another minute or so in case someone has a question. All right, looks like no one has any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Again, I thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful day.